Good morning, students. Today we are going to read a new story from your Beehive book, The Bond of Love. The Bond of Love. Now, this story, The Bond of Love, it's written by Kenneth Anderson. Now, this story is about love and affection between a human being and an animal named Bruno, as you can see in the first line. Now, this Bruno is a bear, sloth bear. Sloth bear means the Indian bear. So, this story is about all the love and affection that a human can have for an animal and the animal for the human being. And the story, I'll give you a brief gist about the story that once the narrator finds this sloth bear and he gifts him to his dear wife. And gradually the time passes, and narrator's wife and the baby bear share a great bond of love and affection. Now they too, the narrator's wife and Bruno, they share a unique kind of love and affection between themselves. But gradually, what happens as the bear grows big and needs some open or some big space to live? So they both, narrator as well as his wife, decide to send him to a zoo. But both of them cannot bear the separation. They cannot bear the separation between. So they are also worried and do not eat food properly. And hence, what happens? The bear is brought back to the narrator's house, and both Bruno as well as his wife becomes happy. So we'll read the chapter. I will begin with Bruno, my wife's pet sloth bear. I got him for her by accident. So an accident happened, and accidentally he found this pet bear, Bruno. 2 years ago, how he find he is explaining. 2 years ago, we were passing through the sugarcane fields near Mysore. People were driving away the wild pigs from the fields by shooting at them. Some were shot and some escaped. We thought that everything was over when suddenly a black sloth bear came out panting in the hot sun. Panting. Panting means breathing very heavily, है ना? जो हाफना जिसको बोलते हैं, panting in the hot sun. Now, I will not shoot a sloth bear. Went only. But unfortunately for the poor beast, this beast means the sloth bear animal, one of my companions did not feel that way about it and promptly shot the bear on the spot. And as we watched the fallen animal, we were surprised to see that the black fur on it moved and left the prostrate body. Now, I will not shoot a sloth bear wantonly. Wantonly means for no good reason. बिना कोई reason के I can't shoot. But unfortunately for the poor animal, beast means the animal, one of my companions did not feel that way about it and promptly shot the bear on the spot. And he shot. But as we watched the fallen animal, we were surprised to see that the black fur on its body moved and left the prostrate body. Now, prostrate means lying on a ground, है ना, facing downwards, पेट के बल. So he was lying there. Then they noticed. Then we saw it was a baby bear that had been riding on its mother's back when the sudden shot had killed her. Means her mother died. This baby bear, and Bruno was orphaned. The little creature ran around its prostrate parent making a pitiful noise. Pitiful noise means वो ऐसा आवाज कर रहा था, you will feel pity for him, दया आ जाता. I ran up to it to attempt a capture. It scooted into the sugarcane field. Scooted means ran away speed. Following it with my companions, I was at last able to grab it by the scruff on its neck, while it snapped and tried to scratch me with its long hooked claws. Snapped means katna, to bite. So Bruno's mother died. They shot her. But this baby bear, the narrator wanted to catch it. You know, the narrator wanted to catch it. But it scooted, it ran away to the sugarcane field. Scooted means ran away. Following it with my companions, I was at last able to grab it by the scruff of its neck while it snapped. Snap means bite, and tried to scratch me with its long hooked claws. We put it in one of the gunny bags we had brought, and when I got back to Bangalore, I duly presented it to my wife. Now, this Bruno is gifted to narrator's wife. She was delighted. She at once put a colored ribbon around its neck, and after discovering the cub was a boy, she christened it Bruno. Now, what does christened means? Christian means giving name, है ना? Giving name. In Christianity, Christian means जब उसका नामकरण होता है ना, baptism. So this, after discovering the cub, the bear, it was a male boy. It was Christian. It was named Bruno. Bruno soon took to drinking milk from a bottle. It was but a step further, and within a very few days, he started eating and drinking everything else. And everything in the right word. Everything is the right word, for he ate porridge made by any ingredients, vegetable, fruits, nuts, meat, especially pork, curry, and rice, regardless of condiments, chilies, breads, eggs, chocolate. So everything started eating. So he started eating chilies, breads, eggs, chocolate, sweets, pudding, ice creams, etc., etc., and etc. As for drink, milk, tea, coffee, lime juice, buttermilk, beer, alcoholic liquor, and in fact anything liquid, it all went down with relish. है ना? Relish means full enjoyment. He drank it happily. He drank it happily. Aerated water means something like soda water, है ना? Added with gas. The bear became very attached to our two Alsatian dogs and to our children of the tenants living in our bungalow. He was left quite free in his younger days and spent his time in playing, running into the kitchen, and going to sleep in our beds. So the bear was enjoying the time. है ना? As it was young, it was not too big. One day, an accident befell him. What happened? I put down poison, and the poison was barium carbonate, to kill the rats and mice that had got into my library. Bruno entered the library, as he often did, and he ate some of the poison. Now, what happened? He ate the poison. Paralysis set into the extent that he could not stand on his feet, but he dragged himself on his stumps to my wife. On his stumps. Stumps here means legs. Who called me? I guessed what had happened. Off I rushed in the car to the vet's resident. Here, vets means it's the short form of veterinary doctor, जो जानवरों के डॉक्टर होते हैं. A case of poisoning, tame beer, barium carbonate. What to do? Now they all were surprised. Out came his medical books, and a feverish reference to index began. Feverish reference means not feeling good. है ना? He was not feeling good. What poison did you say, sir? Barium carbonate. Ah, yes. Barium salts. Ah, barium carbonate. Symptoms paralysis, treatment, injections of. And he was reading the book. Just a minute, sir. I'll bring my syringe and the medicine. A dash back to the car. Bruno still floundering, struggling to move. About on his stumps. Stumps means legs, yes, but clearly weakening rapidly. So he was gradually he was looking weak. Some vomiting, heavy breathing with heavy flanks and gaping mouth. So he was just gasping, है ना, जोर जोर से ऐसे करके वो सांस ले रहा था. Hold on, everybody. It goes the hypodermic. Bruno squeals 10 cc. Means hypodermic. Hypodermics means injection under the skin. 10 cc. This is the amount of the injection, है ना, amount of that liquid in the injection of the antidote enters his system without a drop being wasted. 10 minutes later, condition unchanged. Another 10 cc injected. So, after one syringe was injected, the condition did not change. The condition remained the same. So, another 10 cc injected. 10 minutes later, breathing less. Stertorous. Stertorous means noisy, है ना. The breathing was noisy. वो एकदम आवाज ले लेके सांस ले रहा. Bruno can move his arms and legs in a little, although he cannot stand yet. अभी भी वो खड़ा नहीं हो सका. 30 minutes later, Bruno gets up and has a great feed. He looks at us disdainfully, as much as to say, what's barium carbonate to big black bear? To me, Bruno is still eating. So now he is fine. है ना? He is fine. So Bruno gets up and has a great feed. He looks at us disdainfully. Means he's not showing some respect. है ना? थोड़ा गुस्से में होगा इसलिए. So he's not showing some respect. So this was the first incident. Now another incident, paragraph 11. Another time he found nearly 1 gallon of old engine. Now what does gallon mean? Gallon means a big, बड़ा सा jar type का. A gallon of old engine oil, which I had drained from the sump of Studebaker. Studebaker here means a car, old American car, उसका नाम है, and was keeping as a weapon against the inroads of termites. Termites, दीमक जो लग जाता है. So he promptly drank the lot, and Bruno drank a lot of this engine oil. But it had no ill effects whatever. लेकिन इसका कोई ill effect नहीं हुआ. Nothing happened. The months rolled on, and Bruno had grown many times the size he was when he came. He had equaled the Alsatians in height and had even outgrown them. Alsatians means the dogs. They are of very big height, है ना? बहुत लंबे लंबे होते हैं. So he had even outgrown them. उससे भी बड़ा हो गया था वो height में. But was just as sweet, just as mischievous, just as playful. But his innocence was the same. As he was very fond of us all. Above all, he loved my wife, and she loved him too. She had changed his name from Bruno to Baba, a Hindustani word signifying a small boy. So now the name was changed from Bruno to Baba. Baba means a Hindustani word which signifies a small boy. And he could do a few tricks too. थोड़ा थोड़ा वो ट्रिक भी सीख गया था. At the command Baba wrestle or Baba box, he vigorously tackled anyone who came forward for a rough and tumble. Give him a stick and say, Baba, hold gun. And he pointed the stick at you. Ask him, Baba, where's the baby? And he immediately produced the cradle, affectionately a stump of wood, which he had carefully concealed in the straw bed. So he could perform many tricks. है ना? Now he had learned. He could play with his wife and many other children living there in the bungalow. है ना? In their neighborhoods. He could do many tricks. Then what happened? Then my son and I advised my wife, and friends advised her too, to give Baba to the zoo at Mysore. He was getting too big to keep at home. So, after some weeks of such advice, she at last consented. So, she admitted. वो मान गई है ना. She gave permission. She last consented means she agreed. Hastily and before she could change her mind. Hastily means बहुत जल्दबाजी में है ना. Quickly. Before she could change her mind. कहीं उसका दिमाग फिर से ना चेंज होगा. No, I will not give it. A letter was written to the curator of the zoo. A letter was written to the curator. Curator means the in charge of the zoo. Did he want a tame bear? Tame bear means pet bear. For his collection, he replied yes. The zoo sent a cage from Mysore in a lorry, a distance of 87 miles, and Baba was packed off. Now Baba will go to zoo. Bruno. We all missed him greatly, but in a sense, we were relieved. My wife was inconsolable. Means we could not console her. है ना? Impossible. It was impossible to console her. She wept and fretted. She wept. Wept means rona, weeping. है ना? Fretted means a sort of uneasiness. है ना? Worried. For the first few days, she would not eat a thing. Means narrator's wife was highly attached, very much attached with this pet bear Bruno. Then she wrote a number of letters to the curator. How was Baba? Back came the replies. Well, but fretting. He refuses food too. Now the same thing was happening. You can just imagine. The bear was also not eating there. Here the narrator's wife is also not eating. Fretting. Here the wife is also fretted and Bruno is also fretted. After that, friends visiting Mysore were begged to make a point of going to the zoo and seeing how Baba was getting along. They reported that he was well but looked very and sad. Means he was not good there. He was not good there. So, he was well but looked very thin and sad. All the keepers at the zoo said he was fretting. For 3 months, I managed to restrain my wife from visiting Mysore. Then she said one day, I must see Baba. Either you take me by car or I will go myself by bus or train. So I took her by car. Now, his wife, the narrator's wife, is going to see herself. Friends had conjectured that the bear would not recognize her. A friend said that no, he is not going to recognize you. Conjecture means guessed, है ना? वो guess किए थे. I had thought so too, but while she was yet some yards from his cage, Baba saw her and recognized her. He howled with happiness. She ran up to him, petted him through the bars, and he stood on his head in delight. So, this was the love you can see here. While she was some yards from his cage, Baba saw her and recognized her. He howled with happiness. She ran up to him and petted him. Petted means, patting, हाथ फेरना, through the bars. For the next 3 hours, she would not leave the cage. She gave him tea, lemonade, cakes, ice cream, and whatnot. Then closing time came and we had to leave. My wife cried bitterly, and Baba also cried bitterly. Even the hardened curator and the keepers felt depressed by seeing this uh, emotional love between Bruno, rather we can say now Baba, है ना? Between Baba and narrator's wife, they also feel depressed. As for me, I had reconciled myself to what I knew was going to happen next. And then, oh please, sir, she asked the curator, may I have my Baba back? Hesitantly, he answered, Madam, he belongs to the zoo and is government property now. I cannot give away government property. But if my boss, the superintendent at Bangalore, agrees, certainly you may have him back. So now I cannot give it back to you because, sorry, it's the government property. But if my superintendent, the boss, who lives at Bangalore, he agrees, certainly you may have it back. There followed the return journey to Bangalore and a visit to superintendent's bungalow, a tearful pleading. Tearful pleading. What does pleading mean? Pleading, requesting. And it was tearful. She was crying in tears. Baba and I are both fretting for each other. They both are worried for each other. Will you please give him back to me? He was a kind hearted man and consented. So he he just agreed. है ना? He agreed. Not only that, but he wrote to the curator telling him to lend us a cage for transporting the bear to Bangalore. So not only he just gave, he also wrote a letter to that curator that you should give him the cage also, so that it could be transported easily. Now back we went to Mysore again, armed with the superintendent's letter. Baba was driven into a small cage and hoisted on the top of the car. That cage was kept on the top of the car. The cage was tied securely, and a slow and careful return journey to Bangalore was accomplished. Once home, a squad of coolies were engaged for special work in our compounds. Squad of coolies, the workers, the laborers, were engaged in a special work in our compound. What they did? An island was made for Baba in their compound. It was 20 feet long and 15 feet wide and was surrounded by a dry pit, moat 6 feet wide and 7 feet deep. A wooden box that once housed fowls was brought and put on the island for Baba to sleep in at night. Straw was placed inside it to keep him warm and his baby. The grand stump, along with his gun, the piece of bamboo, both of which had been sentimentally preserved since he had been sent away to the zoo, were put back for him to play with. So, the piece of bamboo through which he just imitated that I am holding a gun, was kept sentimentally preserved. बहुत प्यार से रखा गया था उसको. Now it was put back for him to play. In a few days, the coolies hoisted the cage onto the island, and Baba was released. He was delighted, standing on his heels. He pointed his gun and cradled his baby. My wife spent hours sitting on a chair there while he sat on her lap. He was 15 months old and pretty heavy too. The way my wife reaches the island and leaves it is interesting. I have tied a rope to the overhanging branch of a mango tree with a loop at its end. Putting one foot on the loop, he kicks off with the other to bridge the 6 foot gap and constitutes the width of the surrounding pit. The return journey is made the same way, but who can say now that a sloth bear has no sense of affection, no memory, and no individual characteristics. How can one say that animals can't have affections? They can't memorize. And so this story touches us. How how an animal can have so much of love with a human being. So, Kenneth Anderson has given a very unique relationship and a very unique kind of relationship between an animal and a human being. You can just imagine that they both were worried for each other, they both lost their appetite. So, this is how an animal and a human being both can have love for each other. So, thank you, students. Tomorrow, in our live class, we'll go through it with more details. Okay? Thank you.